My girlfriend refuses to take control of her life, living off me, and won't let me break up with her, forcing me to take drastic steps. It was around 2 years ago when everything started to unravel. I had been with Megan for 3 years, and in that time, she had morphed from the charming, ambitious girl I had fallen for into, well, this. A woman who seemed to think that the world owed her something, or worse, that I owed her everything. She had dropped out of college, citing a burnout that no one really believed. At first, I sympathized, telling her it was okay to take a break, that she just needed some time to breathe. But months turned into years, and she still hadn't found her footing. Instead of doing something productive with her life, she'd spend her days glued to the couch in a semi-permanent stupor, watching TV shows that weren't even good enough for background noise. Meanwhile, I was doing everything I could just to stay afloat. My hours at the office stretched on, endless shifts and projects that piled up higher than the mountain of takeout boxes surrounding Megan every evening when I came home. That's when I knew things were starting to feel hopeless. Today was just like the others, only worse. I walked into our apartment at 6 p.m., the door barely shutting behind me when I was hit by the familiar stench of stale pizza and reheated Chinese food. Megan was in bed again, surrounded by a fortress of half-eaten boxes and empty soda cans, her hair a tangled mess, and her skin pale from lack of sunlight. I stood there for a moment, watching her. She hadn't even showered or brushed her teeth today. I wanted to scream, but instead, I just let out a long, frustrated sigh. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep carrying us both. Megan, what are you doing? My voice came out a bit louder than I intended. This isn't how you should live. This isn't how anyone should live. She sat up in bed, her eyes barely open, and a small frown spread across her face. But instead of acknowledging the situation, she just slurred, "Don't yell at me, I'm tired." And that was when it tipped me over the edge. I had worked a 60-hour week to support both of us, and this was the thanks I got? I could feel my temper rising, and before I knew it, I was shouting, "You can't just sit here all day, Megan. You need to do something. Anything." Her response wasn't the one I was expecting. In a fit of rage, she leaped from the bed and slapped me across the face. It caught me off guard for a second, but the sting of her hand was nothing compared to the crushing weight of the situation. "I don't have anyone else," she said, her voice trembling now. "You're all I have left. Don't leave me, please." I took a step back, feeling the anger burn in my chest. I had wanted to break up with her for months, but I never could. She always had a way of making me feel guilty. And tonight, it was no different. "I can't do this anymore, Megan. I just can't. I need to move on." But she wasn't done. In a move I can only describe as desperate, she ran into the kitchen, grabbed a pair of scissors, and pointed them at her chest. I froze. I had no idea how to react. Part of me knew she was just trying to manipulate me, but another part of me couldn't risk being the guy who didn't take it seriously. What if she actually did something? What if I came back to this apartment tomorrow and found her lifeless on the floor? In the end, I did the only thing I could. I promised her that I'd stay. But I wasn't convinced. Something in me had snapped. I needed out. And this time, I was going to make it happen. The next day, I woke up early. I didn't even bother to change my clothes when I got home from work. I just stood there in front of her, watching her shift uncomfortably under the weight of my gaze. She was smiling, oblivious, jumping up and down on the bed like a child. But there was no going back now. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. Her playful demeanor faltered for a second, then she stood still, staring at me like she could sense the seriousness in my voice. I told her everything that had been building up inside me for the last few years. I talked about how tired I was of trying to keep her afloat while she did nothing but drain me, emotionally and financially. I told her how, no matter how hard I tried to support her, I couldn't continue to live like this. I told her she needed to get a job, go back to school, or find anything that would give her life some direction. And for the first time in months, she actually listened. Her eyes locked with mine, and for a brief, fleeting moment, I thought maybe she was starting to understand. She agreed with everything I said, even suggesting places she could apply to, classes she could take. She seemed hopeful. But then I delivered the crushing blow. "I don't love you anymore," I said, my voice cracking under the weight of the words. "Not the way I used to. Not the way you need me to." She went silent. For the first time in our relationship, I saw her completely still, her face frozen in shock. And then it came the tears, the desperate apologies, the pleas for me to stay. I told her that maybe someone else would be better for her, someone who could handle her lifestyle, someone who wasn't suffocated by the weight of her expectations. But when I said those words, she broke. She cried harder than I had ever seen her cry, her whole body shaking with the force of it. "Please," she whispered through her sobs, "I can change. Just give me a chance." Her words hung in the air like a desperate lifeline, but I could feel my resolve hardening. "I can't," I said. "I've tried. I've given you so many chances, and you haven't done anything with them." But she wouldn't let go. She promised to change, promised to get her life together in 2 months. She listed out places she would apply to, classes she would look into, and, for the first time, she seemed genuine. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. Could I really trust her to change? Could I trust her promises? I didn't know. But I had to make a choice, and I knew it couldn't wait forever. It's strange, how much can change in a month. A whole 30 days passed since I first laid everything out on the table, and here I was, sitting across from Megan once again, but this time, the atmosphere had a different weight to it. The air felt thicker, like something was finally about to crack, and I wasn't sure whether it would be her or me. She'd begged for time to fix things, time to make it right, to prove that she could be the girlfriend I once imagined her to be. She'd cried, she'd apologized, she'd promised to change. And for the first few days, I believed her. But as the weeks dragged on, I started to see her efforts for what they really were, a desperate attempt to cling to something she knew was slipping away. She wasn't changing, she was just performing, desperately trying to fix a broken relationship with empty promises. That night, she came to me again, her eyes wide, a half-distraught look in her face. "What do I have to do?" she asked, almost pleading. "Tell me, please. I'll do anything. I just don't want you to hate me. I can't live with that. I have nothing without you." I knew this wasn't about her love for me anymore. This was about her fear of being alone. And that scared me more than anything. I didn't want to be the villain here, but damn it, I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending. "We'll see how things go in a month," I told her, feeling a cold resolve take hold of me. "Give me a month, and I'll see where we're at. But if things haven't changed by then, I'm out. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep waiting for someone who isn't going to meet me halfway." I couldn't help but feel a little bad, though. Part of me wanted to protect her from the inevitable crash that was coming. I knew she was spiraling, and as much as I was done with the relationship, I didn't want her to completely lose herself. I needed to give her the space to figure it out on her own. So, I slept on the couch that night. I didn't want to be in the same bed as her. That wasn't some petty power play, it was just, I needed distance. And sure enough, around 3 a.m., she woke up, tears in her eyes, wanting to talk more. "I'm exhausted, Megan. Let's talk tomorrow, okay?" I didn't even look at her. I just stared up at the ceiling, my mind too tired to process anything more. She didn't argue, though. She just sat on the floor next to me, sobbing quietly under her blanket. I told her to stop, but she couldn't help herself. I knew then that this was probably the hardest thing I would ever have to do in my life, but I didn't regret it. I couldn't. The weight of my feelings was getting lighter with every word I spoke. At least I was finally being honest. A few days later, she came up with something new, a solution, in her words. She had seen something on TikTok where couples put a timer on their phones and aired their grievances in a set amount of time. The idea was that it would be some sort of structured way to fix everything. I rolled my eyes. "That's dumb," I said, barely able to stifle the laughter that threatened to escape. "If we're going to talk about our problems, there's no time limit. If it takes hours, it takes hours." She eventually agreed, and I could see the gears in her mind turning. She wasn't giving up just yet. "So, you go first," she said, her voice soft, almost hopeful. I sighed. Here we were again. I thought about it for a while, and when I spoke, my voice was cold, like I was recounting a list of grievances I had long since buried. "The moment I started losing love for you was gradual. It wasn't one thing, it wasn't even a big thing. It was a collection of small, irritating things that piled up until I couldn't ignore them anymore. And it wasn't your fault, not really. You just stopped caring. You were content with existing, and that killed me." Her face dropped, and I could see the confusion on her face as I spoke. She couldn't understand. She never would. I continued. "You see, when I was starting my job at the hospital, things were brutal. The tempo was relentless. My shifts were long, the work was tough, and every day felt like an endless battle just to keep up. I had to push myself harder than I ever had before. But I did it because I believed in it, and I believed that hard work would pay off. I could deal with the stress because I had a purpose. But when I came home to you, to nothing, no food cooked, no effort to even take care of yourself, it made me so angry. I didn't need another source of stress, Megan. I needed a partner, not someone who expected me to do everything for her." Her eyes started to tear up again, and she opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "I'm not done. I hated myself for being so cold, but I needed to get this out. You dropped nursing school, and I was upset. You were more than capable of succeeding, but instead of fighting through, you chose the easy way out. And I get it, it was hard, but you could have kept going. But you didn't. You chose to do nothing, and I was left here, holding everything together. I tried to be patient, I tried to be understanding, but every time I suggested something, anything, to get a job, to learn something new, to just do something, you rejected it. Every single time." Her face twisted with guilt, but I couldn't feel sorry for her anymore. I was disgusted. Not with you as a person, but with the way you handled your life. You wasted your potential. And I'm sorry, but I can't keep carrying us both. The silence hung heavy between us, but this time, it was different. I felt lighter, more sure of myself than I had in years. I don't hate you, Megan, I said quietly. But I'm done. I feel nothing. I'm empty. I just want out. And she just stared at me, wide-eyed and trembling, like a wounded animal trying to make sense of a world that had suddenly turned against her. But no matter how much she begged, no matter how many tears she shed, I was done. She asked if I hated her, and I gave her the truth. I don't hate you, but I don't love you either. And I don't think I ever will again. I didn't wait for her to respond. I just got up, walked out of the room, and didn't look back. Things were looking up, or at least, that's how it felt in the moment. After I had set that rigid month-long deadline, Megan had gone into overdrive. She seemed determined to turn everything around, to prove that she could be the person I needed. She dove headfirst into a frenzy of trying new things, like a person who had just discovered a whole new world of possibilities. The burst of energy, while alarming, was at least a sign that she cared. For the first time in ages, it looked like she was trying to improve herself. At first, I couldn't help but think, maybe she's really going to change. Maybe this is the breakthrough we've been waiting for. She started with a literal, handwritten list of things she wanted to try: hobbies, interests, career prospects. The two big ones were photography and cooking. I was intrigued, though cautious. It wasn't that I didn't believe she could change, it was more that I had grown so indifferent to her that I wasn't sure it would make a difference. Still, I decided to entertain it, give her the chance to prove herself. The first few days were full of promises and small gestures. She was signing up for cooking classes, putting feelers out on job boards like Indeed and Glassdoor for entry-level positions, even talking excitedly about learning photography. She bought a Canon 250D camera with money she made from selling old clothes on Depop, and suddenly, she was glued to her phone, looking up tips and techniques for capturing the perfect shot. It seemed like she was finally doing something, and I played along. I kept my word, matching her effort, even though I felt the emptiness in my chest growing with every interaction. It wasn't love I was giving her. It was just a hollow version of patience, a faint shadow of the support I once had. I didn't know if I was doing this out of obligation or if I was secretly hoping that maybe, just maybe, something would click. I didn't feel anything, but she kept pushing, trying to make me believe that change was possible. We went out a lot. She insisted on taking photos in the city, on weekends and late evenings when I had to drag myself out of bed after long, exhausting shifts. I felt like a ghost walking beside her, offering the faintest smiles, pretending to be invested. At one point, I wondered if I could truly keep this up for the next few weeks. What was I even holding on to? It wasn't just the activities that started to change. Megan's affection level skyrocketed. It was like a switch flipped, and she was suddenly the most loving, doting girlfriend in the world. The affection she showered me with was almost suffocating. I could barely go 5 minutes without her asking, "How are you doing? Are you upset? What do you want to do later?" It was exhausting. At first, I tried to smile, to go along with it. I mean, what else could I do? She was finally showing signs of life, right? But as the days dragged on, I could feel the pressure building. She was turning everything up to 11, and I wasn't sure if I could keep up with her. Her public displays of affection, PDA, were in full force, too. Holding hands at every corner, stopping to kiss me in public spaces, asking if we could stay out longer, even though I had work early the next day. I was losing track of how often she said "I love you" in a single sentence. She was desperate to keep me close, to prove that this time, things were different. But the more she pressed, the more I pulled back. I wasn't used to this version of her. The frantic, over-the-top version that seemed almost manic. It wasn't love, it was an overwhelming need, a kind of obsession. I couldn't help but feel like I was being love-bombed, and I knew that love-bombing never lasted. By the second week, the cracks began to show. She was putting on an act, trying too hard to create the illusion that everything was perfect. But it was unsustainable. There's only so much I could take before I started to break. It was too much too fast. Her manic energy was suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in her constant need for validation and affection. The way she watched me, waiting for a reaction, analyzing every word I said, it was wearing me thin. I had already told her I felt indifferent. I wasn't sure how much more I could give. My friends at work were noticing it too. They said I was more tired than usual, barely keeping it together. Every shift felt longer, harder. They warned me again, "You're being love-bombed. She's putting on a show, trying to keep you from leaving." At first, I didn't want to listen. I wanted to believe that she could change, that this wasn't just a fleeting phase. But the more I saw her desperate need for reassurance, the more I realized they were right. She was holding on to me with everything she had, and I was slipping further away. I started talking to my friends at work more, two of my female coworkers, who I had become close to over the years. They were grounded, pragmatic, and they had seen it all. They warned me again and again that this wasn't going to end well. She's going to love bomb you. She's doing it now, and it'll only get worse. I didn't want to hear it, but they were right. The hardest part was knowing I had to make a choice. I told myself that my lease was ending soon, and that would give me an out if I had to move. It was comforting to think that, but deep down, I still wasn't ready to cut the cord. I didn't want to see her break, but I also couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel nothing. I was already emotionally checked out. I had promised to meet her halfway, but each day felt like an emotional battle I wasn't prepared for. I could see her efforts, her attempts to change, her new hobbies, but nothing was going to fill the hole that had been growing between us for so long. Each night, she would sleep on the floor next to me, even when I asked for space. She said she couldn't accept being alone. She needed to be near me, even if it was just in silence. And I let her. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed anymore. But deep inside, I knew this wouldn't last. No matter how much she tried, the relationship had already run its course. The clock was ticking, and soon, I would have to face the truth. I had already been on edge for weeks, so when I woke up that morning, I didn't think much of it. The previous days had been a blur of ups and downs, Megan's manic energy, her attempts to change, my struggle to keep my own emotions intact. But today felt different. I had managed to steal some time for myself, some rare moments where I wasn't drowning in her need for attention. I was rested, which was a miracle in itself, and I was actually looking forward to work. It wasn't that I loved my job, but it was the only place where I felt like I had a bit of control over my life. I had no one pulling at me there, no one trying to demand my time or affection, just me and my coworkers, who were supportive and grounded. I had even agreed to go out with them after work, something I'd been avoiding for the past few weeks. I hadn't realized how much I missed spending time with people who didn't expect anything from me, who just enjoyed my company for who I was. The evening out with my coworkers was exactly what I needed. It helped me reset. But as the night went on, I started to feel guilty. I hadn't checked in with Megan that day, and I knew she'd be waiting for me at home. By the time I got back, it was nearly 9 p.m., and I had a few drinks in me. Honestly, I wasn't even drunk, I was just tipsy and more relaxed than I had been in weeks. I knew she'd be upset, but I didn't know just how much. I opened the door to the apartment and saw her sitting in the living room, just staring at me. She didn't say a word. Her eyes were wide, but there was something about her gaze that made my stomach tighten. It was unsettling, like she was waiting for something. I asked her what she had been doing, and it was only then that I realized she wasn't on her phone or watching TV. She was just sitting there, staring into space like a ghost, completely still. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I told her I had been out with friends, like I had the right to do, like I wasn't obligated to give a full explanation. But she already knew who they were. She had known about my female coworkers for a while, and I could see the unease in her eyes when I confirmed it. She asked if I had been drinking, and I told her I had. The way she asked the question felt oddly accusatory, but I wasn't sure if it was just me being paranoid or if there was something else in her tone. Either way, I didn't like it. It was like she was looking for something to latch onto, something to prove that I was doing something wrong. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. I could feel the weight of her stare on me, and it was starting to make me uncomfortable. She wasn't saying anything, just sitting there like a pressure cooker waiting to explode. Then, she brought up the one thing I had been trying to avoid, the month deadline. The moment I had set, the one where I promised her I'd make a decision about our future. She asked, in that almost calm voice of hers, "Have your feelings changed yet?" It took me a moment to respond. The question caught me off guard. I had been so careful not to think too much about it, but now, hearing it out loud, it felt like a giant weight pressing down on me. "I appreciate what you're doing," I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I'm still unsure about where we stand. I can't give you an answer yet." I could see the flash of hurt in her eyes, but she masked it quickly. She told me, in the most passive-aggressive way possible, that I was being dismissive during our outings. She felt like I wasn't putting in the same effort to make this work. It was like a switch had flipped. Her tone became more desperate, her words more biting. I tried to explain. I told her I was going out with her whenever she asked. I had matched her energy when she wanted to explore hobbies. I had been there, trying to meet her halfway. But it wasn't enough. She still wanted more. "You're not even trying to meet me halfway," she snapped, her voice shaking with frustration. "You just don't care." At that moment, something inside me snapped. I had been holding back for so long, letting her talk, letting her try to manipulate me into staying, into caring. But I was done. I told her the truth, the brutal, painful truth. "I've been trying. I've been doing everything you've asked. But the truth is, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I even want to try. You've been asking for so much, and I've been giving. But I'm empty, Megan. I can't keep pretending I feel something I don't." She froze, her face going pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For a second, I thought she might collapse, but she didn't. She just stood there, shaking, as if my words had knocked the breath out of her. I turned away, needing to get some space. I didn't want to look at her. I didn't want to see the tears that I knew would come, because I couldn't handle it anymore. But she followed me. Of course, she followed me. Please, she begged, her voice a mixture of desperation and anger. You can't just leave me like this. You can't just shut me out. I already have, I said, not turning back. My heart was pounding in my chest, but the words came out cold. I'm done, Megan. I'm done trying. The room was silent for a long time after that. She didn't speak. I didn't speak. It felt like we were both stuck in a moment we couldn't escape, and for the first time in ages, I felt like I could finally breathe. As September rolled in, the weight of the decision was starting to feel like a constant pressure on my chest. My lease was set to end at the end of the month, and the days were passing by so quickly that it almost seemed like time itself was rushing me toward this moment. Every morning I woke up, there was a palpable sense of inevitability in the air. I knew what I had to do, but that didn't make it any easier. The 2 weeks after I'd gotten sick had given me the space to think and reflect. Megan had stayed with me more than I expected, checking in on me, bringing me food, and keeping me company during the nights when I couldn't sleep. At first, I hated it. I hated how being sick forced us to interact. I hated feeling like I was depending on her for the smallest of things, even though she was trying to take care of me in the best way she knew how. But as the days went on, something shifted between us. We talked, and for once, it didn't feel like I was fighting to hold my ground. It didn't feel like I was on the edge of a breakdown, and neither did she. We talked about our lives, our work, the mundane stuff that used to be the glue of our friendship before everything got tangled up with romance, expectations, and resentment. It was cathartic, in a way. It was like a reset button, and it felt like we were two people who had once been close but had lost their way. There was no yelling, no arguing. It was peaceful, strangely so, but the peace didn't last. It never does. Even though we were getting along better, there was still that barrier between us. The final argument, the one that had cracked everything open, still hung in the air. It was unspoken, but I could feel it whenever I looked at her. Something had broken that day, and no amount of calm conversations or shared moments could fix it. I had made my decision weeks ago. I had to leave. I couldn't stay in this limbo, this half-life we were living. And though I wasn't expecting it to be easy, I also didn't expect what happened next. On the last Saturday of the month, I finally told her. I explained that my lease was ending, and I had decided not to renew it. I told her that I needed a fresh start, that I had to focus on myself and my future. I kept my tone calm, even though inside, my heart was racing. I had been dreading this moment, but I knew it was time. The moment those words left my mouth, I saw her face change. It was like a mask falling off, her expression twisted into something that looked like both confusion and disbelief. And then, the tears came. The anger came, too. She accused me of abandoning her, of throwing away everything we had been through. She yelled at me, calling me selfish for leaving when things were finally getting better. I tried to explain again, to keep calm, but the accusations were like daggers. They hit me harder than I expected, and I could feel the sting of betrayal in every word. I'm not abandoning you, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. I'm taking care of myself. I can't keep living like this. I can't stay here and pretend everything's okay when I feel like I'm suffocating. But she didn't hear me. She just kept yelling, her voice cracking with desperation. I knew I had to leave. But then, in the blink of an eye, she lunged at me. I didn't see it coming. Her hand hit me across the face, hard enough to knock me back a few steps. I was stunned, shocked, confused, and then it hit me like a freight train. She just hit me. I don't know what was worse, the fact that it happened or the look on her face when she realized what she had done. The moment the slap landed, her anger shifted into panic. She started apologizing in a blur of frantic words, her voice rising in pitch as she tried to explain that it wasn't her fault, that she didn't mean it. But I felt something shift inside me. A coldness washed over me. The betrayal was too much. I didn't want to hear the apologies anymore. The hurt from her actions was so deep, I couldn't even look at her. I left the room, needing space, needing time to think. I stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind was spinning, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly alone. I didn't want to escalate things further. I didn't want to make a scene, but I needed to clear my head. So, I left. I drove aimlessly for hours, my emotions like a storm inside me. I ended up at a nearby hospital, called a friend, and let them check on me. I didn't want to make it a big deal, but I knew something had broken in me. I had to be sure I was okay. Physically, I was fine, but emotionally? It felt like I was drowning. I sat there in the waiting room, numb and confused. The doctor confirmed I was fine physically but urged me to take time and think about what had happened. I took a few hours, just sitting in silence, processing everything that had occurred. The reality of the situation was sinking in. This was it. There was no going back. When I left the hospital, I knew what I had to do. I had to cut ties completely. I had to tell her that it was over. No more back and forth. No more pretending. I sent her a message. Short, direct, and clear. I won't be pressing charges, I wrote, but I need you to stay away from me. Forever. I can't do this anymore. I'm moving on. Please use your lifeline wisely. I hit send, and for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. It was over. The next day, I packed my things. I left the apartment, closed the door behind me, and didn't look back. I was finally free.